Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Josephine. I will be your MC for today's presentation. Thank you for joining and welcome to our virtual homeowners orientation. We're excited to have you here as we provide an introduction to your much awaited pre-construction condo at Vendôme, Markham. As many of you may have questions regarding the move-in process, we have designed this workshop to answer some of the frequently asked questions. First, let's start with a quick look at the customer journey map, which shows the upcoming steps. For most of the homeowners, the next step is the pre-delivery inspection, followed by the interim closing or occupancy process. Today's program will be comprised of 3 segments joined by our guest speakers. We'll start with interim closing procedures by Webster from Berlis, followed by property management procedures by Sandro Zuliani from Crossbridge, and lastly, pre-delivery inspection. Now we'd like to begin by introducing HMW's legal counsel, Mr. Webster from the esteemed firm Berlis. Andrew will speak to you about interim closing policies and procedures. Take it away, Andrew.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Pleased to be here and glad to see that the Vendôme project is now approaching occupancy closing. So there's some things that everybody needs to be aware of and we need to get organized for. So the first question that I've been asked to address is the simple question, what is interim occupancy? And interim occupancy is the period of time between the interim closing date and the final closing date. The final closing date is the date that the condominium is registered and therefore we'll be able to complete the title transfer of the unit to each purchaser. And that's the date that I also consider to be the significant financial closing event in that on the final closing date, each purchaser will pay the balance of the purchase price that's due. On the interim closing date, typically there's also an additional 5% deposit that's due, but on the final closing date, the balance of the unpaid balance of the purchase price is due and payable. So the interim closing date's important because the unit has now been completed and is ready for occupancy by the purchaser. The Condominium Act in Ontario recognizes that, especially for large projects like Vendôme, there will be units that are finished and completed and ready for occupancy and certified by the city of Markham as being ready for occupancy well in advance of the final units being completed. With a building, typically the units on the lower floors are completed sooner than the units on the upper floors. So the Condominium Act in Ontario gives developers the ability to allow purchasers to complete an occupancy closing and take occupancy of their units and start living there as soon as they're ready and certified as being fit for occupancy. So provided that the purchaser properly completes the interim closing process, the purchaser will be entitled to take occupancy of his or her dwelling unit on the interim closing date. The occupancy closing or interim closing is an important step because purchasers will be re-engaging with their lawyers who will represent them on the transaction, or maybe for the first time engaging with them. It all depends on whether you engage somebody when you looked at your agreement of purchase and sale and signed up in the first place. But certainly it's been a few years, so it's very important that you retain a local lawyer who is familiar with doing these types of transactions and start engaging with them. The interim closing process involves my office collecting information as to how you want to take title, whether you are eligible for the HST new housing rebate, making sure that you get signed up with the utility service provider. In this circumstance, it'll be PowerStream, which is the local service provider in the Markham area. You will be paying an additional 5% deposit in most circumstances, and you'll be making arrangements to pay what's called the occupancy license fee, which is a monthly fee that's payable during the interim occupancy period. And I'll speak in a minute about what the occupancy license fee consists of. So that's a fair bit of information. My office sends a very detailed letter to your lawyer, which lays out all the things that will be necessary to complete the occupancy closing, and then your lawyer will receive that information and discuss it all with you. So skipping to the next question, what is the interim occupancy fee composed of? Well, it's composed of, first of all, interest on the unpaid balance of the purchase price. And as you will know, you've probably paid at least 20% deposit installments. If you're a non-resident purchaser, when you signed up the agreement of purchase and sale, the deposit structure probably was, you will have paid more than 20%. And there will be another 5% deposit installment due on occupancy closing. So typically the unpaid balance of the purchase price represents about 25% of the total purchase price, and the interim occupancy or the occupancy license fee comprises interest on the unpaid balance of the purchase price calculated at the rate prescribed by the Condominium Act. Now, as you all know, interest rates have been increasing as recently as yesterday. This interest rate is set on a monthly basis under the Condominium Act. Prior to yesterday's increase, the interest rate was 7.14%. But as a result of yesterday's increase, that rate will increase once more. So that's the first component of the occupancy license fee, being interest on the unpaid balance of the purchase price on a monthly basis. Secondly is realty taxes. And thirdly is your common expense contribution on a monthly basis. So that's what the interim or the occupancy license fee is. And you will be paying that commencing on the interim closing date right through to the final closing date on a monthly basis. And we typically collect, or I should say the declarant or the developer collects that money by way of a pre-authorized payment arrangement. So the money just simply gets withdrawn from your account on a monthly basis. So that's question number 2. Question number 3 is what is final closing and condominium registration? Well, condominium registration happens when the developer has substantially completed construction of the project, so that all of the both construction requirements and safety requirements and planning requirements of the city of Markham and other approval authorities have been satisfied. And the condominium plans and the declaration have been approved by the registry office. So once all that stuff is done, the developer can then register the condominium. And by registering the condominium, what we do is we register or deposit in the land registry office the plan of condominium and the declaration. And the act of depositing those things in the registry office all approved by the local municipality. That gives birth to the condominium corporation. And at that point, all of the units are created so that they can then be individually transferred to purchasers. Prior to the date of registration, we didn't have this in place yet. So after registration, we do, and we're then in a position to transfer title to the individual units. And the purchaser can take title, obviously, and grant to their lender, if they have a third-party lender, a mortgage, or so that they can pay the balance of the purchase price through that mortgage financing. So that's registration, and typically the final closing date or the title transfer date will take place approximately 30 days following the date of registration. There are some things that have to happen between registration and final closing. We have to organize the condominium corporation. We have to register bylaws, pass rules, and the registry office has to go through the exercise of opening an individual, what we call a PIN, or a parcel for each unit. And that takes some time, typically about 10 business days after the date of registration. So the period of time between registration and final closing is about 30 days. And that will also give your lawyer the opportunity to get organized with you to complete the second stage closing, being the final closing process. On the date of registration, my office will notify your lawyer what your final closing date will be, so that you'll be informed and you can start organizing your affairs accordingly. Okay, so when do you need to prepare for final closing? Well, I would recommend that you start preparing for final closing at the same time as you're organizing to complete the interim closing. So first and foremost, most important thing, you need to organize who your lawyer is if you haven't already, and you need to make sure that that lawyer has contacted my office so that we have them on record. Because as you'll have gathered from me explaining all of this, our primary point of contact is your lawyer. And so we need to know who that is so that we can provide them with all the necessary information that he or she will need in order to help you to close this deal. So you need to engage with your lawyer and start discussing things like how you're going to take title, your status with respect to the new housing rebate, your source of funds. Are you paying for this out of your own resources, or will you need mortgage financing? You'll need to discuss additional closing costs like land transfer tax, your lawyer's fees, and other closing costs. And just generally consult with your lawyer so that you fully understand both the interim closing or occupancy closing process and the final closing process. Okay, so that's question number 3. Now on to question number 4. What is a phased condominium? So phased condominium is an interesting and somewhat unique structure to Ontario. The Condominium Act in Ontario allows a developer to register a large project like Vendôme in stages. And I liken this or compare this to, or use the word, rather than phases, I like to call it an expandable condominium, because we register the first, well, I'll call it the first phase, which in this case will be Vendôme North. And we register the first phase, and then when Vendôme South is completed, we then expand that condominium to include the next phase being Vendôme South. And so at the end of all of that, there is one condominium corporation, one board of directors, one annual operating budget, and it's it's a much simpler legal structure than the alternative. The alternative is to have Vendôme North registered as its own separate condominium corporation, Vendôme South registered as its own separate condominium corporation, and then they would be tied together with a shared facilities agreement. An expandable condominium or a phased condominium under Part 11 of the Condominium Act is a legal structure that's particularly well suited to a project like Vendôme, where there's multiple buildings that will ultimately share infrastructure such as a below-grade parking garage, internal driveways and roadways, landscaped open spaces, recreational facilities, and other systems. So if the ultimate project, when it's totally completed, will share all of this stuff, it just makes sense for it to be one condominium corporation rather than two condominium corporations that will be bound together by a shared facilities agreement. In my experience, condominium corporations often fight about the fair allocation of shared facilities costs between the two components. And so the legal structure that's proposed for this project completely does away with that. And you'll end up with one condominium corporation, one board of directors, and that should promote long-term harmony. So that's what a phased condominium is. It's a simpler, more efficient legal structure for the unit owners going forward and into the future. So the next question is, when is the turnover meeting? So first of all, the turnover meeting is a meeting of the unit owners, where the unit owners gather to elect from among themselves a new board of directors. There will be a board of directors comprising of 5 individuals, all owners in the project, and this new board of directors will then have the responsibility to ensure that the project is properly managed, maintained, and repaired over time. And like, they physically won't be doing that, obviously. They will have professional assistance from your property manager, in this case, Crossbridge. And you'll hear from Crossbridge after my presentation. So that's the board of directors. So I'd encourage whoever's listening today, if they're interested in getting involved in the management of the condominium corporation going forward, then they should consider putting their name forward to be a director, or to be elected to be a director at the turnover meeting. So to answer the question simply, the turnover meeting will take place on that date, which is approximately 42 days after the date on which the developer has sold and transferred 50% of the units in the condominium corporation. That is the answer to the turnover meeting. So there was also some questions that came in that I'll answer. The first one being, what do I need to do to prepare for interim closing? Well, you need to contact your lawyer as soon as possible, as I mentioned earlier, and engage with them. And in advance of interim closing, we'll be sending a detailed package to your lawyer so you need to make sure that we know who your lawyer is. You'll need to organize insurance. You'll need to organize funds to pay the additional deposit installment due on interim closing. And that's essentially what you need to do for interim closing. There'll be some paperwork to sign, but your lawyer will walk you through all of that. Second question is, how long is the occupancy period? And that depends. If your unit is ready, if you're on one of the lower floors and your unit is ready sooner than the units that are going to be finished at the last, then your occupancy term will be longer than the individual who's buying up at the top of the building. Typically, occupancy periods can be anywhere from 2 to 6 months. I've seen them longer for large projects, but 2 to 6 months is sort of a reasonable estimate. Next question is, can the closing process be done virtually? And the answer to that is yes. We've seen, as a result of the COVID pandemic, we can do just about everything virtually as we're holding this meeting. So yes, you can do it virtually, but you need to speak to your lawyer to get organized on all of that stuff. The next question is, does the purchaser have the right to delay the occupancy date? And the answer to that is no. The developer has been working very hard to complete this project, and from a financial perspective, it's very important for the developer to complete the occupancy closings as quickly as possible. So unless there's extenuating circumstance, which you'll have to discuss directly with the developer, the date that we will notify you of as being the occupancy date, or the firm occupancy date, or the interim closing date, it's all the same date. That's a fixed date, and we all work towards that.
Thank you, Andrew. If there are additional questions for you after the session, we'll collect and let you know. Thank you again for your time.
Yep, my pleasure.
While we're waiting for the next speaker, if you have further questions, please send us a message to the email address shown on the screen, which is vendome@hwdevelopment.ca, or scan the QR code to follow us on Instagram for the latest updates. Next up, we have Sandro Zuliani from Crossbridge Condominium Services, formerly known as Brookfield Residential Services. Crossbridge has been a long-standing partner in providing property management services and is one of the most recognizing names in the industry. Please begin, Sandro.
Thank you, Josephine, and welcome everyone. Just going to, as you can see on your screen, there's a couple of bullet points. I'm going to sort of talk to a number of points here. And I think first, to understand the question about the point, when can I contact property management for? I think it's equally important for everyone to understand the responsibilities that and I break the responsibilities down in 3 particular groups: that of the developer, declarant, that of the owner, and that of property management. Certainly during the interim occupancy period, we as the property manager will be supplying a full-time property manager, and there will also be a full-time junior assistant property manager on site. And together, these 2 individuals will look after and work with the declarant during the interim occupancy period and with the board of directors upon registration and turnover. We're responsible for managing the common elements in the day-to-day operations. You each received at your initial closing your proposed disclosure documents that contained the proposed anticipated rules, as well as the declaration. And in that declaration, it talks to a number of do's and don'ts that you should refamiliarize yourself with, so that, if you're anticipating going out and buying a big, large barbecue, your rules in the declaration specifically addresses those particular items. So please, once again, reorientate yourself with those documents. On behalf of the declarant during the interim occupancy, it's our responsibility to certainly communicate on behalf of the declarant. There will still be ongoing construction, there will be ongoing testing, so certainly keeping you in the loop. as to what is happening at the project falls to our responsibility. We will be initially setting up all maintenance contracts, dealing with the cleaners and the concierge and various service providers. Along with our responsibilities, certainly the owners have a responsibility as well. As mentioned, you have that responsibility to comply with the proposed declaration and the bylaws and the rules. I know that Andrew probably covered the leasing component, so you need to familiarize yourself with those items. That it is your responsibility to deal with general home maintenance items. Not everything is included, and there'll be subsequent discussions on Tarion and what is covered and what is not. But for non-warranty related items, don't assume that everything falls to the declarant or property management to take care of. Certainly, we will work with yourselves in terms of, there's always that sort of unknown. Is it a warranty item? Is it a developer's a maintenance item? Certainly between ourselves and customer care from H&W, the declarant, that we will help you and guide you through those processes. So if you come to us and it is more of a declarant responsibility, we'll direct you to that. And similarly, I would expect that if customer care has been approached on various issues that fall more towards property management, they'll direct you towards our operations. There will be responsibilities that you have, and I'll cover it, and that segues into in terms of the monthly condo fees and the payment. That what is included in my monthly condo fees. If you recall, once again, in the disclosure documentation, there was a copy of the first year budget that set out what is and what is not covered. And so from, the facilities, the amenities to concierge, cleaning, that's all incorporated in the maintenance fees that you pay. What you as an owner individually have to pay in addition to, at a point in time when the building registers, aside from your property taxes and your mortgages, is you are responsible for your own electricity consumption within the unit, as well as water consumption within the unit. So there will be a sub-metering company that will enter into an agreement with the declarant, later to be assumed by the condominium corporation. So once you start to occupy, you will be required to complete an application form, and that application form will go to the sub-metering company, who will then generate an invoice to you for your monthly water and hydro consumption. So once again, your common expenses include the cost of operating the common elements of the building, plus you are ultimately responsible for your hydro and water consumption within the unit itself. One of the biggest things that always come up as we get closer to the occupancy period is, how do I go about booking an elevator for moving? In working with H&W, we will have we always establish a welcome letter that will go out at the time of PDI or in advance of PDI, that we will send out to you based on the occupancy schedule. And that welcome letter will set out a couple of things. It talks specifically about how you go about booking an elevator. So in that welcome letter, it will give you the time slots Monday to Saturday that will be available based on your interim occupancy date. You can, for instance, if you're scheduled to occupy October 5th, and you receive that letter of ours, or the welcome letter, based on that October 5th, today you can go and reserve that elevator. But if that occupancy date changes, then certainly you can't move in on that pre-booked date. So you'll have plenty of opportunity and time. We will be working to establish that schedule. We keep Sundays and holidays as non-move-in days, and we'll make sure that the schedule is flexible enough that will work with your schedule of moving into the building. So that will deal with the elevator booking. We also will have an instruction sheet for you. Don't show up with a transport that is 26 feet in size. The space just does not accommodate. We'll have a plan for you exactly where you drive into the project. The concierge they'll also be there to help guide you through where the location of the loading bay and unloading bay for move-in purposes type of thing. We're often asked, you know, I've got the brick that's delivering my couch, not on the day that I'm moving in, but 2 or 3 days. And we all know that the furniture companies and delivery companies will give you an hour or will give you a time that they will deliver. You won't be able to book, you know, Monday between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. because you're expecting your brick delivery, but ultimately, certainly you still have to let the concierge know that you're expecting that delivery. When the delivery person shows up, and if the elevator is booked with somebody moving in, we'll work with your delivery company and the actual people moving in to squeeze your couch delivery in while they're backing up the elevator. So please ensure that you speak with management and the on-site concierge when you have subsequent bookings of furniture and expected deliveries beyond that initial move-in. On security system and visitor access, there's a fair amount of visitor parking within the building. The parking is separated between resident and visitor. To go into the residential side, there will be access fobs and devices that will restrict people from going beyond the visitor parking. So similarly, visitor access into the building, aside from the fact that there is a concierge will be located in the lobby, there will be an interphone system set into the building that will allow you to directly speak with or access to the resident occupying. Similarly, we will not allow anyone to sort of just go into the building and show up at the suite. And I think there are some safeguards into the building that are tied into a system that's citywide, who is a software provider as well as security provider of access devices. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but from a security point of view, that the elevators are fob controlled. That is, not anyone can just get into the elevator and take the floor up to a particular floor. It has to be the resident who uses their swipe card or fob to be able to go from the ground floor up. In terms of visitors coming into the building, either it'll be a combination of the concierge allowing the visitor access up to the floor that specifically that the visitor is going to, once they've been validated as a true visitor through you, the occupant, or in many applications, the owner is required to come down to the lobby to greet their guests, and you jump onto the elevator and go up to your floor. We're seeing more and more buildings from a security perspective today install these access systems, and it is peace of mind to the owners and residents that reside in the building. In addition to sort of the fob devices on the elevators, there will be a number of building cameras and elevator cameras, various monitors and workstations that will be situated at the concierge desk. I had mentioned both at the entranceway, there'll be an interphone system that will allow you direct access to the resident occupying the unit, as well as a smart lock system, which is a product that CityLink has developed, where it provides for a smart lock system that is integrated both on the suite entry doors and in the common areas. So it's not a free-for-all. There is, once again, the design of this access system was you know, the security and the well-being of everyone was certainly kept at the forefront in trying to make not only this building a secure building, but also a smart building, as we're seeing more and more of the new projects take that approach. That's on access and visitor access and security systems. Waste management, you know, all multi-res building, high-rise buildings today are not exempt from the recycling and garbage collection that we see single-family homes faced with. So we have a system that located on each of the 4 floors, a tri-sorter. There's a chute system in which you will be able to go in, and there's a recycling button and a garbage button. So certainly we will be entering into an arrangement with City of Markham or a private hauler for the removal of waste. So certainly doing your part as an owner to reduce that carbon footprint by properly recycling and properly disposing of waste items, it's in your best interest. I often say at this point, you know, one of the tricks that we do at buildings is that when the pizza boxes or pizza deliveries come in, we always like to sort of put the suite number on the pizza boxes, because it's amazing how, you know, individuals think that they can put a 24-inch by 24-inch pizza box down a chute and it plugs the chute, and then all the garbage gets plugged, and then we get complaints of smell. Well, I can tell you that to get somebody back to the building to service that plugged chute is probably about $400 a call, and ultimately, you know, putting that suite number on the pizza box. So I'm giving you a little bit of an advance notice here. If you're having your pizza, make sure that you recycle the box and don't throw it down the chute, because the suite number will allow us to go back and recover those costs from the individual that tried to jam down this big pizza box down a garbage chute. So we're very conscious of you know, the environment, and certainly you know, you as residents as well. There will be items that don't fall into that recycling category or garbage category. You know, if you're disposing of couches and refrigerators or anything of that size, you know, speak with property management. There is a garbage holding facility that we certainly can direct you to and assist you with disposing that equipment type of thing. Pets and other regulations. You know, once again, I draw your reference back to the original disclosure documents that that you all were given or provided at time of purchase. And certainly a lot of the regulations that are set up in the disclosure statement really surface around the amenities that are provided in the building. It's not a free-for-all. I think that certainly, just as a sort of a touch point on some of the amenities that you may or may not have remembered, but there is, you know, a multimedia theater room, there's a guest suite, there's an indoor multi-purpose gym, kids playroom, yoga, dance studios. There will be also a fitness facility. So there are facilities located in both towers that will be available for use by the residents. Some of these facilities will have certain hours. We don't expect the gym at this point in time to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Initially, the board, once elected, may decide to do that if that's what the owners want or are looking for. When it comes to the guest suite, certainly there is a fee that would be charged for reserving the unit along with a damage deposit that certainly makes sure that the inspection done before and after, that if there's any damage, that ultimately the lessee who booked the facility is responsible for any damages far and beyond the sort of the general maintenance that typically we see. There will be, these agreements will be created in due course. In terms of the timing of the availability of the amenities, certainly the priority is to ensure that the units are completed, ready for occupancy, and then at some point in time, the amenities will start to come online. We certainly will keep in weekly touch with construction arm and the declarant and the project management team, and as the amenities start to roll out, we certainly will make everyone aware of what amenities are available and the procedures and the processes you go about in terms of booking these facilities. One of the things that's tied into this visitor access and security system is that as part of the welcome letter that you will receive, in order to confirm your booking date, we have a resident information form that we need you to complete and submit back to us. And the information contained in that resident information form, such as email address, phone, emergency contact, do you need assistance during any emergency situation, we need you to complete that form and resubmit that form. And this will all be outlined in the welcome letter. And the reason why I'm just talking to this point right now is that one of the things that we will establish as part of sort of the city link and the tools that we utilize to communicate to all the owners is that we will do email blasts to residents when certain things are available, not available, or there's a closure or shutdown. Certainly today it is the way of communicating, although ultimately anyone is welcome to come down to the management office and speak directly with my management team once we're set up. So we will be using email as a main communication tool, but fear not for those that don't have computers, that certainly we will make available hard copies of any material that does go out or needs to be distributed. So on the regulations, once again, I often, refer you back to the disclosure documents. There are such things as requirements, for instance, that the backside of your curtains has to be white or off-white. So don't go out and spend a fortune on drapery if that's the route that you're going to go, in which the backside is black or gray or green or red, because there are rules and requirements in the condo documents. And you can appreciate from an aesthetic and curb appeal that, I think we've all driven by buildings where you see tin foil and you see the Canadian flag and this flag and pink and blues, and it really detracts from the curb appeal of the building. So there's standardized items like that. So please do familiarize yourself with that. In terms of pets, once again, the disclosure documents, and particularly both the rules and the declaration, will speak to pets in terms of the number of pets that you're permitted. Even though this is a building, as is the case today with 99% of most condominium corporations, that pets are permitted. However, it doesn't mean that you just let the pets run wild and free. There is an obligation that you have with respect to looking after your pet on the common elements. They're supposed to be on a leash. Ultimately, not fair to the pet that you go to work and you leave them locked up in the suite and they're barking and howling. It does, please ensure that you respect the fact that there are other people in the building and who do not want to hear your barking dog. So there is an obligation that if your pet is deemed to be a nuisance, that certainly you will be required to take action to ensure that that nuisance is dealt with. So once again, please familiarize yourself with the pets. It's pretty much standard that, the pets is really reference to, birds, dogs, and cats type of thing. So that the fancy pets out there and of that nature, the exotic pets are something that are not permitted. Insurance. Firstly, without insurance, even though your unit may be occupiable and it's ready, that without producing confirmation that you have insurance, that may not necessarily lead to the release of the key to you. So what type of insurance do you need? And please understand that condominium insurance is quite significantly different than a tenant package insurance versus insurance that you might have for a single family home. There are specifics that you need to deal with when it comes to insurance coverage. And one of the things that you need to make sure is that you have insurance for all your personal property. That is for all your suite contents, and for those that have a locker, the contents within your locker should also be covered under your personal property insurance in the event that there is a flood or something of that nature that takes place. So irrespective of what might cause, an incident that may involve insurance, that you're responsible for personal property coverage. As well as the personal property coverage, you need to make sure that you have insurance for any betterments or improvements. And what I mean by betterments and improvements, it's, let's say that the standard flooring is linoleum flooring, and that you've upgraded to solid hardwood flooring. From an insurance perspective, you need to insure for that betterment being the hardwood flooring versus the linoleum. You will receive sometime after interim occupancy, but certainly no later than registration, you will receive what the industry defines the unit to be either a standard unit, or there may be very well a bylaw that will be created that defines what that standard unit is. And what that standard unit description really tells you is that, what is identified is part of the unit that is your responsibility, and what is the corporation's responsibility when it comes to repairs or replacement of that particular item. So you need to make sure that you've got that improvement coverage in place. No doubt today, personal liability insurance for both, anything that happens within your suite, as well as for any guests that come to the property, you're ultimately responsible for that. For those that eventually may be leasing out their unit, you certainly need to provide still the insurance as the primary owner of the building, primary owner of the unit, and your tenant has to have their own and should have their own property coverage, liability coverage, everything of that nature. Also, one of the unique coverages that is available and should be considered as a condominium owner is the fact that there are times and situations and that we've experienced in buildings where it's been a significant claim water escape that has made the unit not occupiable. And so there is insurance that you can acquire that it's relocation costs, so that if you have to move into a hotel for a month because your suite, the extent of damage in your suite is that great, then you can get insurance to provide for that added expense. Keep in mind, though, that even though you may not be occupying the unit, certainly you're still responsible for the monthly common expenses. So I leave you with the fact that insurance, as I said, for condos is a little bit different than what it is for single family home and as a tenant. So certainly speak with your insurance brokers to make sure that you do have the adequate and the appropriate insurance in place. And as I mentioned, you will be required to produce a copy of that insurance certificate prior to your final interim occupancy. Volunteer for the boards of directors. Andrew, I heard, was just speaking briefly in terms of, the steps of finally when we reach registration and the turnover. So certainly once, the 51% threshold has been reached after registration and transfer of titles have taken place, the notice will come out from Crossbridge on behalf of the declarant calling for that turnover meeting. And that turnover meeting is where you as owners will have an opportunity to elect directors from amongst yourselves to the first board of directors. The board of directors will probably comprise of 5 individuals, given the size of the condominium community here. Under the Condominium Act, the requirements are pretty straightforward. forward for being a director. You have to be 18, you have to be sane, and you have to be solvent. There's a further requirement under the Condominium Act, and that you have a disclosure document that we will prepare, which is a government form that you need to complete, and it indicates for all purchasers and owners out there, whether you're a resident, whether you're a tenant, do you live in the building? So there's a bunch of yes and no's, and that disclosure document has to be kept up to date and current. There is also a requirement under the Condominium Authority Office of Ontario that you're required that once you're elected to take these education courses. They're not burdensome. They're sort of just brief sessions that you must take as a director, not every year, but once you become a board member. We as Crossbridge have an agenda in terms of helping you through the first year, because there are a number of items that take place and decisions that have to be made, whether it's hiring the performance audit engineer, whether it's hiring the financial auditor for the year. We'll take that, take the elected board members through that process. You can anticipate that there may be on the onset, 1 or 2 meetings a month once things stabilize. Usually there are monthly board meetings. The elected board may decide to ask for volunteers outside of the board if the corporation is interested in creating committees, whether it's a housekeeping committee or a amenity committee. So those are things that will come in due course once the board is in place. So we're really there for those that have not experienced being on a board. Don't let that intimidate you. Don't let that not make you volunteer and take that opportunity. You don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be an auditor. We certainly, I think, a mix of individuals is great for the community, and as I said, we certainly will be there to help you through that process. So for sure, don't be shy, and we will, once again, as I said, once that stage comes at a point in time in the building, we will keep you informed. I think that's it, Josephine. I think I know that there were a couple of questions that came in. Just
Yes.
quickly, I'll quickly address them. One of them was, can I move in on the day of key pickup? Our welcome letter addresses that, and it is our recommendation where you can, that at least you give yourself a 24-hour window between the day that you actually pick up your keys and the day that you move in. And the only reason I suggest that, we suggest that, is that I know that you've got to make arrangements with your movers to move out of where you are from and coming into the condo. But if you are booking that date and you show up at the building and we have not received notification from the solicitor that the unit has closed, then we can't allow you to move in. So we certainly would hate to see you have to go back home and spend that extra money of repacking everything. However, there are situations and circumstances where you have to be out of that unit on that day, and hopefully your unit has closed and we will accommodate. We're not trying to run a boot camp here, but I'm just wanting to sort of our practices, if you can and where you can, to give yourself that 24-hour sort of break between closing and actual move-in type of thing. How often does property management need to maintain items inside my unit? Once again, the budget drives what our responsibility is as the property management company. In terms of our responsibilities is to manage and maintain the common elements. There is provision, and there are provisions within the first year budget. There is heating, cooling equipment within each of the suites. We have budgeted, notwithstanding the fact that that heating, cooling equipment belongs to the unit owner. What we do is that, and is budgeted for, at least spring and fall, we come in to do sort of what I call the grease, lube, and filter change and tune up on your heating and air conditioning equipment within the suite. Other than that, it's really, you know, the first year in terms of the carry-on, which will come a little bit in the next session here, that ultimately the majority of the repairs and maintenance within the suite falls to yourself as the occupant. Certainly, if there are backups that are specific, there will be always, as a management company, we're available 24/7, in a combination with the concierge, we'll be able to address those items. But we will have, once again, some communication going out once occupancy starts to really identify for you responsibilities that fall to condo versus responsibilities that fall to the unit owner.
Now we'll welcome Darlene Freeman from the PDI Group, a third-party agency that H&W has enlisted to conduct the pre-delivery inspections. Darlene, please tell us more about the PDI process and how it works.
All right, so the PDI process, it's actually quite an exciting time, because this gives the purchasers a chance to really get a look at their new home. And it's a chance also to find out if there are any deficiencies or things like that. But I know that some people get very nervous and they think, oh my God, I'm going to find all these big things. Where typically you will find, if you find anything, it'll be very, very minimal. It's usually a cosmetic thing that can be addressed, you know, quite quickly. So the PDI process, a lot of you have already gotten your letters to say that your PDI is booked, and we're looking forward to meeting you. I can tell you right now that the person that's going to be doing the PDIs, his name is Fernando. He is amazing. You will love him. He's very thorough and he's very inclusive. So when we do the PDI, you'll be doing it with us, meaning that we'll guide you through, and you'll look with us. And if you have any questions during it, we'll answer your questions, and we'll note anything that we need to mark down. And it's quite a pleasant experience. It's not scary. It doesn't take, you know, hours and hours and hours. And I think that you will find it very interesting. When you first arrive, I believe that you're going to be parking at the Hilton parking, and the letter that we send you, I believe, gives you all this information about where you're going to park. So you'll be parking there, and the letter does state only 2 adults to attend, which means no one under the age of 18 can come, and that's for numerous reasons. One of the important ones is it is a construction site, and children are not allowed to be there because of that, for a lot of, you know, for insurance reasons and things like that. The reason we say 2, it's not just us, it's always been sort of suggested by Terrion as well. And the reason being is because when you have a bunch of people at an inspection, it makes it very difficult, you know, to walk through, and that's when things get missed, and you don't want anything to get missed. So 2 people is typically the perfect amount. You will be given, I believe, construction boots and a hard hat at the beginning, because while there's nobody living on the site, it is definitely still a construction site. Once people start to move in, we don't necessarily need to give you construction boots, because there will already be people living there. But at the beginning, yes, you will be having to do that. So you'll be wearing construction boots, a hard hat, which you can take off once you're inside the unit. We inspect only the interior of your unit. So we will go through each room and we'll look at everything from the floors, walls, counters, cabinets, appliances. We'll show you how certain things work, the heat, the cooling, all of those kinds of things. We suggest that everybody wear long pants and closed-toed shoes as you come to the site, until you get your boots and all of that. So long pants is very important to wear. We ask that you wear like a top that has sleeves on it, because rules of a construction site is no tank tops, no shorts. So that we try to continue that when the people come for their inspection as well. What happens if you miss something at the PDI and you think, oh my God, I missed this? You don't need to worry, because you do have an opportunity. Again, there is a 30-day form that you can fill out, or if it's something that you feel is urgent, you can call us. Jesse is going to be the person who will be your contact on site. He's going to be the after-sales service guy, and he will be there for you. So if there's anything that you're concerned about, you can call him. You can also call me if anything, if you're concerned about anything. So there's always going to be someone to call. What we tell you during the PDI, if you see something that we feel is not warranted, we're going to explain that to you. However, that doesn't mean we won't write it down for you, but we do explain when something isn't warranted, just in case, you're expecting it to get addressed and it doesn't get addressed. We don't want you to have any surprises. We like to make sure that you understand the process, as clearly and as fully as you can, because we want to make sure that this is as stress-free as possible. We can explain why things are not warranted. If you're concerned that something was supposed to be there that wasn't there, we can check into those kind of things for you. So you don't have to worry about anything regarding the PDI, about missing anything or something, as I say, is not there that you expect to be there, because we will check into all of those things for you if you are concerned about that. When you get to the site, don't wander around the site. There's going to be, I believe it says in the letter, where we're going to meet you. So wait for Fernando in the meeting spot that's noted on your letter. He will come and meet you. He will take you up to your unit. If he's running a little late from another PDI, that typically does not happen, but sometimes it might. Don't panic. You will still get your full PDI, so not to worry. If you are running a little late, if you could give us a call, then we would know, because if you're about 10 minutes late, we will go up and start your PDI for you. And then when you get there, we will show you exactly what we have found, and we will continue on with you. That's basically everything you need to know, unless you have some questions, if I haven't touched on something that's important.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Darlene. Here are some pre-submitted questions for you. The first
Okay.
question I have here is, can I paint my walls or do any minor renovation during interim occupancy?
Okay, we like to tell everybody, don't do anything the first year. The reason being is plumbing, electrical, all of those things are under warranty. If you happen to do a minor renovation, even changing a toilet, even changing a light fixture, could affect your warranty with those items, could affect it with plumbing, could affect it with electrical. So we say, if you can, try not to do anything the first year. I mean, painting should not be a problem. If you want to paint, go ahead. But we like to suggest that you leave things as is at least the first year.
Perfect. So the next question I have here for you is, what areas of the property are typically inspected during a PDI?
Okay, so all of, as I say, it's everything inside your unit. We do not, if the amenities are ready for us to show you, we can show you where they are. They may not be safe enough to walk through, but we can show you where they're located. If they're safe enough that we can open the door and show you, we will. A lot of builders don't want us to do that. So we'll decide at the time, the builder will let us know if yes, it's safe to do it, or no, it's not safe. We typically do not inspect the balcony, because the balcony is actually considered common element, but for your exclusive use. If it's safe to, you can definitely go out on the balcony. If it's not safe to, we will let you know at the PDI. So it's basically everything inside your unit. So every room, every wall, every floor, every bathroom, and everything that's in those rooms will be inspected, including closets and all of that.
Great, thank you for clarifying. The last question I have here for you is, can I hire my own home inspector for the PDI?
You absolutely can. They can come on your behalf. But I'm telling you now, it is a waste of your hard-earned money. The reason being is these are new units, brand new. You're not going to find anything that you might find if you're doing a resale condo or a resale house. So in hiring your own home inspector, to me, and I've spoken to others who have done it, is not cost effective because it really truly is not a necessary thing. I will not say you shouldn't do it, but I absolutely think it is not necessary because they're not going to find anything that you would need them there for. We're going to find it. You already have us, and hiring an inspector to me, as I said, is really, really not cost effective.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. If there are further questions for you after this presentation, we'll send them your way. Thanks again for your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
The homeowner's orientation has now concluded. We'll send out the recording shortly to everyone who wishes to recap what we have covered today. If you still have any unanswered questions, please reach out to our customer care team or PDI Pro. Their contact information is shown on the screen. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this orientation. Enjoy the rest of your day. We look forward to seeing you again.